The Unnatural is the 16th episode of the 4th season of Frasier. This is directed by Pamela Fryman. And of course, as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And I rather enjoyed this episode. I don't know if it will ever be my favourite, but I do love anything that connects us back to Frasier's life in Boston. And of course, one thing that strongly connects him to Boston still at the time, is Frederick. And Frederick is coming to visit. At the beginning, Frasier is actually trying to arrange a tour of Microsoft because that's what Freddie really wants to do. And Roz and Bulldog come in from playing softball. And then after that, we're over at the apartment. Niles comes over with some photos of Frasier and Niles as children. And then Freddie arrives, and he's played by Trevor Einhorn in this episode. And he has a crush on Daphne. It's rather adorable. And Frasier takes him to tour KCL. And unfortunately, Roz is on crutches, and Frederick is asking a few questions, including, why do people call you Bulldog? And Bulldog actually did a really great thing, because unfortunately, Roz is telling Frasier in her booth that she couldn't get the tour of Microsoft. She used to date somebody who worked there. It's not going to happen. And meanwhile, Bulldog is actually telling Frederick that Frasier is really good at softball, because Frederick suggests that Frasier plays in the next game because Roz is unable to. And I thought it was really sweet. It dramatically backfired, but I thought it was really sweet that Bulldog was willing to make Frasier seem better at it than he actually was, which I thought was rather lovely. And we do actually learn that Bulldog didn't want Frederick to think bad of his father, because Bulldog remembered very vividly the time when his opinion of his father changed, when he caught his father having an affair with another woman. It's always nice when we just dig a little bit deeper under the surface of characters like Bulldog and we get to know a little bit more about their backstory. I think that was very brief, but very interesting. We're then briefly at Cafe Nervosa, and then Martin agrees to help Frasier practice, and he's in the cage, the balls are flying at him. Yeah, it's not going well for Frasier at all. But things get a little bit awkward, because he tells Martin, I just wanted to be able to do this because I'm worried that Freddie will realise I'm not perfect. Every boy remembers the first time they realise their father is less than perfect. And I don't know if there's any truth in that. I don't ever remember a specific time when I realised my parents were humans. Obviously, very young children do grow up believing their parents are just perfect and can do everything, because of course that's their role. They are there to protect you from everything. There obviously would have been a time when I realised they were human and not perfect, but I don't remember. I'd be very interested to know if anybody else can remember a specific time. So I find it quite strange that several characters in this episode can remember that exact time. But I don't think Frasier realised what he said when he said he would never forget that moment. And Martin pushes him to give an answer. When did he realise that Martin was less than perfect? And it turns out Frasier was in the 3rd grade. They were at a restaurant and Martin couldn't work out the tip in his head. Frasier thought his father was less than perfect because his father couldn't do mental maths. I love it. It's brilliant. Niles then comes over to the apartment, and Frasier is casually dressed for softball. He's got a KCL shirt on and quite light-coloured jeans. Frasier wears jeans in the new season, in the new series, but Frasier of this time, seeing him in jeans is very strange. Also, I can't imagine jeans would be the best thing to wear when you're playing sports, but either way, very casually dressed. It looks great. Frederick is running in the house. We find out he'd just walked in on Daphne in the shower, basically, and Frasier gives him into trouble a little bit, and then he sits Frederick down. And I thought this conversation was brilliant. I thought Frederick was fantastic. Very well executed conversation, because Frasier confesses to Frederick, I'm not good at softball and I wanted to tell you this. And he goes on about remembering the first time you realise your father isn't perfect. And Frederick says rather adorably, it's not the first time. That never even occurred to me. But it's also very funny that Frasier thought that up until that point he'd just been perfect in his son's eyes, which I rather found amusing once Frederick revealed that that's not the case. And Frederick points out, "You couldn't fix my computer. You thought Venus was the North Star, and I've seen you run," which is just absolutely adorable. And Frasier explains that when he realised this with Martin, it's because he couldn't do maths in his head. And Frederick responds, "Grandpa can't do maths in his head?" Absolutely adorable. And of course, Martin walks into the room just at that moment, and it's fabulous. And Daphne asks Frederick if there's anything she can do to make him feel better. And he says a hug. And he knows what he's doing. And Niles' face was fabulous. And it's a fun way to end the main story. We actually end with the final episode with Frasier giving Roz some Bobby Sherman gifts, and then Bobby Sherman, and I'm not that familiar with Bobby Sherman, so that didn't mean much to me at all, but it was a nice enough way to end things. It is a really good episode. I really like anything that focuses on Frederick because, as I said, it always connects us back to Boston and Lilith, and for me, that's very much a happy place. It's an interesting episode, and also very thought-provoking. It did make me think about when I first realised my parents were humans and not perfect, but I can't think of a single occasion. I'd love to know if anybody has any memories with that. But either way, regardless of me not being able to remember anything specific, I really liked The Unnatural. It's definitely a pretty decent episode of Frasier.